I decided to put newspaper on the floor in the kitchen and glass this board, and oh my gosh, that was a bit of a mess. The board.
Hello and welcome to the UK Surf Show. We are your hosts. I'm Pete.
And I'm Mitch. I'm trying not to laugh.
Yeah. Do you know why he's trying not to laugh? Yeah, because Mitch starts mouthing the words that I say as I'm saying it, and it's really off-putting, and this is about the 5th time we've had to record it.
But it pleases me, so we're going to do it. And on today's show, I'm really stoked about this one. We've got Mr. Brad Rochfort, who you may have heard of for a few reasons. One, through the amazing surfboards that Brad makes, Rochfort Customs. And two, he is the UK rep for FCS, for Gorilla, and for SoftTech Surfboards. And he's an insanely, I mean, you're going to hear throughout, I think he is the nicest man in surfing.
I think he's the nicest man in the world.
and I wouldn't disagree.
No, he's such a nice guy. Like, he just, even like, for time for the interview, he had so much time. And then after the interview, he's just given us so much time as well. He's just a nice guy, all-round nice guy.
Absolutely. And, you know, as you'll find out throughout this episode, I've got a few things coming up with sort of Brad and FCS, which I'm really excited about. But when I sort of had this idea in my head and I got in contact with Brad and posed the idea to him, I didn't know how it was going to go. I'm just this little distinctly average surfer, you know, posing big plans and big ideas about making big content, you know, and this whole average surfer approach versus pro surfer, which we've spoke about so much, you know, and these people will say, oh, you know, I'm an average surfer. And at that point, you see them land the air reverse. Yeah. And when I say I'm an average surfer, like, I mean, I
stood up, woohoo!
Yeah, that. But I don't know if I'm going to come out of a duck dive with or without my board on most occasions. So that's what I mean by average surfing.
I'm so average, I don't know if I'm going to come out of the water or not.
Well, we know already that when you go under, you're committed to staying under. So that's the end of it for you. But yeah, so I'm really excited about this one. And Brad's he's really helpful, really welcoming, and really supportive with ideas.
And super knowledgeable as well. Like, you speak to certain people well, we've done it through this podcast, spoken to certain people, and like these little glimpses of knowledge. And this is one of the reasons I started the podcast, was like, we said at the very beginning when me and Leighton started it was like, we don't know everything about surfing, so we're going to learn along the way. And speaking to someone like this has got so much knowledge on everything surfing. You could sit there with him for days and you still wouldn't even scratch the knowledge that he has about surfing.
Absolutely. And do you know what? It's funny you say that, because I was chatting to someone about this. We've had quite a few compliments about the show recently, and I think we've already spoke about them on the summary episode and whatever else, and a few episodes that have been out. But, you know, I think people might assume that we do a ton, serious in-depth degree level research turning up to interviews. And I'm not saying we turn up completely unprepared, but like you've just said, I like to think that because we are not experts, we in the moment are able to ask, I hope, the questions that people listening want to hear, but we go on that same, you know, learning curve or learning journey as anyone listening. That's what I think anyway, because I learn loads when we speak to these people. And you know what, with Brad, if there's a point that drives home how nice Brad is, like kind of out of nowhere, we've got a really exciting announcement actually with Brad and FCS. But, you know, if you want to hear more, you're going to have to make it to the end of the show and find out what that is. But it's a big deal.
Nice. So we may as well just jump straight into it with Brad.
All right. Well, my name's Brad Rochfort. I'm salesman by day, shaper by night. My main job is I work for SurfHardware International, who are the parent company for FCS fins, SoftTech Surfboards, and Gorilla Grip. And that's my main job, and I do a bit of shaping on the side as well.
You say do a bit of shaping on the side. I've seen some of your boards and looked through some of them. They're not.
That's not a bit of shaping. There's some serious thought and hardware right in front of me right now.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a passion project. I mean, I've been doing it for 15 years. And I think in the job I have with FCS, I'm quite lucky that I get to go into all the best surfboard factories in the country, in the UK.
Yeah.
I know all the shapers, I know all the glassers, I know all the sanders, I know all the plug guys, I know all the teams that work in those, and I get to talk to them almost every day.
Okay.
So I feel like maybe I'm a bit lucky that I had a bit of a fast track to learning.
Yeah.
Getting tips and ideas off all these amazing craftsmen that I get to work with.
And I mean, the journey to bring you to where you are now, you're from where?
Originally, I grew up in South Africa.
Whereabouts?
I was born in Johannesburg, but I spent most of my youth and my surfing years on the Natal south coast, just south of Durban.
Right.
So I lived in a place called Amanzimtoti, surfed a beach called Warner Beach, which is quite famous for being the home beach of Frankie Oberholzer.
Okay.
He was back in those days. He was on the Sech, Ripkel Sech. A few other names I can mention: Mike Roscoe and Gary van Verrigen, amongst quite a few other real top surfers. Guys who were grinding the QS back in those days. Yeah. And Frankie, Mike, and Gary are still all there at Warner's. They're still locals there. Gary and Frankie are shapers. They're building boards under their own labels. Nice guys. I actually caught up with them back in July. I was in South Africa in July and got to see those guys. So yeah.
When did you move over to the UK?
And so I left South Africa in 1999 on my 19th birthday. And I'm now 42, so that's like
same
quite a
as
long
me
time
then.
ago.
It's a good age to be.
So we left. My mum's English, my dad's South African, but so times are changing, and my mum wanted to come back to the UK, so we moved back.
Yeah.
Set up base in Southampton back then, which was tough for a beach bum that I was at the time. To suddenly become a Southampton city resident was quite a culture shock for me at the time. Sure. But I don't regret it. I lived in Southampton for 10 years. That's where I met my wife. Met a lot of good people there. Shaped my first surfboard there. With a friend, gave me some good one-on-one tuition. His name's Brian Page. Hello, Brian, if you're listening. He's kind of like he's a really good friend. His whole family are close to me, and he has a brand called Roller Coaster Surfboards.
Okay,
yeah. And he did a lot of shaping back in the kind of 80s, and for the South Coast crew.
Right.
So yeah, I got an opportunity to shape a board with him in his shed and learn some tips. And after that, I went home out to my house in Southampton and tried to build my own board. Shaped it outside in the garden on the grass, and then glassed it in the kitchen because it was winter and I needed the heat for the resin to set. So I decided to put newspaper on the floor in the kitchen and glass this board, and oh my gosh, that was a bit of a mess. The board overheated. The resin set before I'd even got to the laps. So the whole thing was a disaster. I had to rip it all off, and then the entire house stank of resin fumes for a couple of days, and. Even more bizarre than that, all the food in our house tasted of resin, and that was just from the fumes getting into the food. So we had to bin all our food.
Parents happy?
Well, it was with my wife. She was not happy.
Did she know what you were up to in the process of that?
Yeah. She was like, this was actually before we got married, so somehow she's
I know what I'm doing, love, don't worry. Well, nothing could go wrong. I'm
surprised she still married me after that one, but it was a funny one at the time.
And before we get to where you're at now with the boards, your surfing, I presume surfing wasn't just a recreation for you. I'm going to assume you were quite a good surfer when you
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to learn to surf in some of the best waves in the world, and the KwaZulu-Natal South Coast, famous for point breaks and tropical water. I learned when I was 10, so I was quite lucky that I started fairly early.
Yeah,
and I mean, I surfed a lot, and my school, I could see the sea from my school, and we would take our surfboards to school every day, slide them under the beds in the sick room, and run down to the beach from school, stuff our school uniform in our backpacks, and just surf all afternoon.
I can't even imagine how good that must be to do that.
Yeah. South African stories, the only thing that goes through my head is sharks.
Well, I had a few incidents in the past, I must say. Been chased out the water by sharks, seen fins pop up. Luckily, never got involved or knew anyone personally that got hurt in any way. But there was always sightings, and it's pretty scary at the time.
You're probably a good person to ask, because recently we done a Q&A session, and that was one of the questions was, if there were sharks in the water, would you surf? And I always think that the obvious answer is no, but if you've grown up around that and that's all you know, it's not that out of the ordinary, is it? So I presume you would just kind of go, but you would get out knowing, and then get back in as soon as you could, or...
Yeah, I think I was still a teenager at the time, so sharks, I haven't had all my life to get used to it. So I was still out the water, and I was out the water for the rest of the day. But these days, what we know about sharks, they don't stay in an area for very long. And I know, I know people who surf in J Bay, and if there's a shark sighting, they're out the water for like 20 minutes, and then they're back in. If it's pumping, no one wants to miss it.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, I don't think I could go back in.
No, I would be nowhere near it. I know I say that, but I'd be nowhere near it at all. I get scared when I say seals. Which could be vicious.
Well, the thing with seals and dolphins, they're actually all way bigger than you think they are when they're right next to you.
Yeah, when you're in their territory, it's a different...
Yeah, I mean, the most scared I've been more scared with a dolphin encounter than a shark encounter. I remember duck diving a wave at Warner Beach, and as I pushed through the face of the wave, 2 dolphins dived out of the wave, one either side of me, and I literally just froze with the shock of it. But it was more how big they were. They're just so much bigger than you think, and they just came flying past me. And I was in such shock, I was shaking. I had to get out, and I sat on the beach for about half an hour just to calm down after that.
Did you realise there were dolphins at the time? Or?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I knew as soon as they dived out, but it was just that initial... What, as they came flying past me. It's a bit of an experience, but... and then everything you see in the water is a bit like you see a rocking up.
Yeah, always worst case. Yeah, always worst case. And did you compete as well?
I was in the school surfing team. I competed against...
Mad, innit? The school surfing team.
That's an odd line to hear, actually. I don't think I've heard that. That's
I was the captain of the school surfing team in my final year. So I did a bit of competing in that. I compete in some fun events like the single fin shootout in Newquay and things like that, but I'm not quite at the level, that the guys who are competing are. I'd say I'm above average, but... No, I kind of lent more into the judging side of things. When I was in South Africa, I started judging contests, and I actually got quite good at that. Before I left South Africa, I'd judged 2 South African surfing championships. I'd done an international bodyboarding event, a few longboard events, and some kind of national tour events around South Africa. Yeah. And I was paid to do that at the time, which was interesting, but. Yeah, didn't keep that going when I moved over here. I kind of lost interest in it.
Yeah. So when did you move to Newquay then?
So moved to Newquay in 2008. So work out how many years that is. 15 years.
Yeah.
That was a busy year for us. That's the year my wife and I got married. We both started new jobs down here. We sold our house and had to buy a new house. There was all sorts of things going on at the same time. But yeah, at the time I was working over in Southampton in surf and skate retail stores, which is where I kind of cut my teeth in sales.
Okay.
And DC Shoes offered me a job as Southwest rep, so I moved to Newquay. We'd been, to be honest, looking for a reason to move down to Cornwall for a long time, and it would always have been job related.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to get a job with DC Shoes, and I worked for them for 6 years.
Mm-hmm. I literally looked straight at your feet to see what you're wearing when you said that as well. And I'm not going to tell anyone what he's wearing.
They're not DCs at the moment.
Nice pair of etnies.
So that was great. That brought me down here finally. After travelling down here, almost several times a month just to surf. So I worked for DC. Then after that, I did 3 years with Skinner's Brewery.
Okay.
Which is Ben Skinner's dad's business, where they make beer. So I was a sales rep for them for 3 years, and I left when I got offered my current job, which is for Territorial Manager for the UK for SurfHardware, mainly FCS, basically.
And how did that come about? Was that an obvious progression, or was it a knock at the door? Or?
Well, I left the surf industry because at the time, it was about 2013 maybe, the whole industry was going through a massive change, and I kind of I just needed to get out and do something different. So I left when the company was making huge changes, so I volunteered to leave, and I took a redundancy package as part of that, and worked for 3 years with Skinner's Brewery. But my heart was always in surfing. I was surfing every day. I was still talking to all the customers I knew, friends, and I got approached. A few people mentioned to me that FCS were looking for somebody, and they'd mentioned my name. So, I'm always, got my ears open for something if there's something interesting. And so I kind of had a chat with them. They flew me to France for an interview at the headquarters in Hossegor over a weekend. It was kind of like a bit of a last minute pull something together to get there and back in a weekend, so it wouldn't affect my job that I was in at the time. And that was that. Basically set up SurfHardware in the UK, and we've been going 6 years, and it's gone really well.
Yeah. So what are the main ones again? Sorry, that you deal with? So
FCS, SoftTech Surfboards, and Gorilla Grip. Yeah. There's a couple of other brands. We do Hydro, which is like a swim fin for like body surfing, bodyboarding, that kind of thing. And we also own a brand called Canoe Lock, which are lockable tie downs. They got steel cables in the straps.
Oh, right, okay.
So if you've got expensive boards on your roof and you're traveling through Europe and you want to go stop for some food, if you've got them tied down, no one can just slash your straps and steal.
I don't even know if I've seen that actually, but I've actually seen quite a lot of posts recently on various Facebook groups and whatever of boards being stolen. Well,
boards getting stolen is generally, it's not planned. It's kind of like people...
An opportunist.
It's an opportunist with a blade or a knife. They slash the straps and gone, jiffy. But these are designed so they can't be slashed. And, if you take some bolt cutters, you might get through them. But who carries bolt cutters in their back pocket, So,
well, funny you should say that. He's sitting with a Scottish man. He does. Yeah. So, and then... the surfboard shaping continuing down here, did that start up afresh down here when you...
Yeah, just brought all my gear and resub. I mean, finding a place, because I do it all from home, that was on the top of the list of buying a house in Cornwall, need shaping bay space. So, so that I just set up in my garage. It's logistically tricky working from one room because I'm more of a board builder than a shaper, because I build the board start to finish. Yeah. So there's all the processes to think about, all done in one room, from shaping, glassing, sanding, airbrushing. I do ding repairs as well. So logistically, it's quite tricky, but I've managed to create like my own custom setup where my shaping racks have glassing racks that bolt on and bolt off.
Okay.
And a drip tray that slots in place and comes off. and then racks in the ceiling and all sorts of little things that help me do all the processes. But I have to clean like a lot between processes, so a lot of dust management.
You weren't obviously put off by that first experience on the kitchen floor of making boards.
No, well, the funny thing is after that, my wife was like, "You're going down to B&Q and you're buying yourself a shed." So I went and bought the biggest shed I could find, which was a 12 by 8. It took up the whole bottom end of the garden, but it was big enough for me to get a longboard in, so and that was it. The shed became the shaping bay. It was fully kitted with lighting, dust extraction, insulation, heating, and that was it. I've not looked back since then, and that's 15 years now.
I've been following you for a while, on social media and stuff, and as I've said a few times, I'm not any expert in the surfing world, and I've only really been surfing for 9 years, which is nothing on the grand scheme of things. So the kind of boards you make, or just the setups on the base, I've never seen anything like that anywhere else. And I was always blown away from the first time I seen your boards. So you've obviously come a long way from that first experience. What was the passion or the thought to maybe, I don't know if it's different, I don't know, but to go the way you've gone? Was there a reason in your thought to make it the way you want it to be?
I follow a lot of good shapers. I like to see what other people are doing. I pick up ideas everywhere, but I've also got all my own ideas in my head. And kind of my shaping evolved a lot into channel bottoms. A lot of that was because of my own personal desire to experiment with channels. Mm-hmm. There's so many different types of channels, and I wanted to know what they all feel like, and being a shaper, it's quite a nice perk to be able to go, I'm just going to make one and see what happens. And, sometimes you make something and you're like, oh, I get it now. Or you ride and you're like, I don't get it. This feels terrible. And then you go back and you try another version of it and another version, and it just evolved over time. So a lot of my boards have channels that I've found that work for me personally. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, but... Yeah. And with that, you've got to think about fins, the size of fins, fin placements, where your plugs go in all these channels, how you fit the plugs in the channels. And the thing I'm working on most at the moment is what I call a dual rocker channel. So it's taking two different rocker curves and using the channels to create that second rocker. So you've got your standard rocker running off the tail of the board, and you utilize a channel shape and curve to create a second rocker, slightly curvier rocker.
Okay.
This idea came into my head actually at the wave pool in Bristol, because that wave is a little different to an ocean wave. It's got a really tight pocket, quite a bowly pocket, but literally 2 meters along the face, and it's quite a flat wave.
Yeah.
So a standard shortboard really struggles to find a balance between those two, because it's in a real curvy pocket 1 second, and it's on a real flat section next minute. And those boards have one rocker to negotiate all those different sections. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had the idea to create a board that had a fairly low rocker to negotiate those flatter sections and get you speed through those sections. Yeah. But then you needed that extra rocker when you're in the bowl and you want to hit the lip or get top to bottom or just lock in the pocket on those expert barrel sections. So I started experimenting with doing that dual rocker, and it seems to actually work quite well.
Yeah.
And it's translated into working as a really good small wave board as well. Pocket rocket type thing. I call it the pool noodle board, the one that I developed. That's kind of where I'm working on some ideas on dual rockers at the moment.
How much of your own time, obviously without, with your job and everything else, you get to put much of your own time into doing that stuff?
Well, shaping happens at night mostly, and at odd times in the weekend, and I just fit it in between general life, family life. I do restrict how much I shape. I don't let myself shape more than 2 boards a month. So I build those 2 boards from start to finish. So I allow 2 to 3 weeks per board.
Okay.
And that gives me time to build the board without rushing or cutting corners. Yeah. But I still have time to surf. I still have time for my family. I've got an 8-year-old son called Kai, and he needs more and more time with me, and we want to do stuff together. So it's finding the balance. So I've deliberately restricted myself on the shaping just so I can have the balance right.
I always feel a bit bad for shapers, envious but bad as well, because I always think you can make any board you want, which is great. But then you've got all these boards, and when you want to go to surf, I'd just stand there looking at them, not knowing what to pick, and just not go surfing because I didn't know what to pick. I'd just be like, no, what do I take?
Yeah. Well, I do have a shed full of boards, which is quite nice, but also a bit space consuming.
Yeah.
And I end up giving some away, and lending them to people as demo boards.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go back to a board I made 5 years previously and just have another play with that, and remember why I made that board and what I was trying to achieve there, and maybe then it spurs on a second wind or something to evolve from that. So that's what I enjoy about it. It's just like the constant pursuit of perfection, which I don't think I'll ever achieve. I think it's a constant evolution, because 1 minute we're on thrusters, the next minute we're on twins, then it's all about channels, and then it's something else, and that keeps it interesting too, because it never gets boring.
It sounds like you've kind of got that real nice balance as well between all of it, which is I think a lot of people would struggle to find. Must be a nice place to be.
Yeah. Well, I do like to try everything, and even going down the asymmetric route. I've started doing a lot more asymmetric than I ever thought I would. Even as little as 5 years ago, I didn't like asymmetrics. I just had a thing that they just looked wrong. How was that any good? But now I'm like so open-minded to asymmetric, and I own a few of my own asymmetrics. I've been making a few for other people, and I definitely see the benefit to it. It's a lot more technical, and but does make sense if you kind of like take all the aspects and understand the aspects. It does really make sense.
So before I get into this, I mean, I'm literally going to call it a piece of art that I'm staring at, ASIM in front of me. For MD that doesn't know what an ASIM is, how would you describe that?
So an asymmetric board is a board that has a completely different left rail side to the right rail side. Could also have totally different fin setup on one edge to the other. And the idea is that we as humans, we stand asymmetrically on a board. If we were standing on a surfboard like you stand on a pair of skis, that would be symmetrical, but because we side on, we your heels and your toes do totally different things to the way a board surfs. So in theory, you want to adapt the heel edge to work with your heels and the toe edge to work with your toes. Because on your toes, you can put a lot more push, a lot more drive through that toe edge rail than you can on your heels. You can't put as much weight through your heels as you can on your toes.
That was so eloquently put. There's no way I could have answered that like that. I would have literally said it's just different on one side to the other, and nobody would have taken much from that. Yeah. It was very well put.
What's the most extreme you could go on one of those? Like, I'm thinking, like, because looking at that one over there, and there's like the left-hand side bottom is longer than the right-hand side. The right-hand side is quite a bit further back. But what's the sort of extreme you could push it to?
You can't see it. It's got a rabbit's foot tail, so it's probably a foot longer on the toe edge than it is on the heel edge. So basically, you can't put as much force through your heels, so it's harder to keep a rail on a bottom turn on your heel side, which is why a lot of people struggle with twin fin fishes, because on the backside when they're surfing on a backhand, if you because those fish tails are long and drawn out right to the points. Yeah. You normally find with those boards, it's really easy to surf on your front side, but much harder on your back side. So it really helps you shorten your heel edge rail, and having a longer toe edge rail is beneficial because you can drive that rail through your turns, top and bottom, which kind of helps you, drive through speed. And then when you turning onto your heels, you've got that shorter rail, so you can pivot that board round a lot easier.
Okay. And this, I mean, literally, it's a piece of art, and we'll make sure there's a video playing over the top to show people what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind this board?
Well, this particular board was the very first asymmetric I ever made, which happened to be in a shaping competition. This was 5 years ago, and it was commissioned by Nixon.
Okay.
And they back then were doing a series called the Nixon Weird,
Right.
which they went around different countries. They did one in America, they did one in South Africa, Australia, possibly Hawaii as well.
Right.
And then they came to the UK to do it. So Nixon Weird UK, they invited 6 shapers to come and do a shape off together. And the idea was to make weird surfboards.
Okay.
And then those boards would then get surfed by pro surfers, and the surfers themselves would judge who was the winner out of those boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was somehow lucky enough to be invited to be part of those 6 shapers. And I was, for me, I'm a part-time shaper, and all these guys are all full-time board builders.
Yeah, okay.
So I definitely felt like the underdog a little bit. And and then that was it. It was run over 2 days, 1 day shaping.
Right.
And then a second day surfing, but they were probably a month apart. Well, they had a waiting period for a good day surf to take that.
Was there some criteria for what you had to make?
So to make it weird, each surfer had to have a specific element in their board, and each of the 6 elements was different.
Okay.
And we didn't know what that element would be. So when I say elements, I'm talking the 6 elements were: one was asymmetric, one was finless, one was a super short, one was a channel bottom, one was a single fin, and one was a twin fin. And you had to each shaper had to take a lucky dip on what that element would be, and then go shape with no time to plan. And you had an hour and a half or 2 hours, I think it was, to hand shape a board from start to finish with that element and make it weird.
So there was so you picked, obviously you got asim. You said super short. How short's a super short?
Super short had to be below 5'4", I believe.
5'4".
Andy Gale got that board. He's a shaper at Luke Hart's factory for Seduction.
Oh,
right,
okay.
So he got super short. Hugh Brockman got finless.
Finless. Literally, so you presume you're using some sort of channel system too.
Yeah, so Hugh shaped a beautiful 8-foot finless that he'd created these amazing channels in the bottom to create some traction. And it was asymmetric too, funny enough. The left side and the right side rails and bottom contours were totally different. It was a beautiful thing he made. We also had Luke Young, Lee Bartlett and Chris Harris, other shapers. So it was the 6 of us. And we had there were 2 shaping bays, and we each had an hour and a half or 2 hours to shape a board start to finish by hand, with a crowd watching, with cameras in your face.
So
obviously that's to shape the board. That's just the shape of the board, and then the colouring in the glass. Everything.
Yeah. So the way they each board was coloured its own unique colour. Mine was a yellow, and the colour we were given was when we had to pull a watch out of a hat, and there were 6 different colour watches, and the watch colour corresponded to your shape you had to do and the colour the board would be.
Right.
So mine came out yellow watch, asymmetric, so the board was going to be a yellow asymmetric.
Right, okay.
And that's how they did it. And then the month between the boards being shaped and then being surfed, the factory, which was Open Surf at the time, did all the colour and the glassing and finishing.
Okay, right. And the fin, I can't go over this finless board. The finless board, I presume, then surfed like a regular board, and you couldn't tell there was no fins in it.
No way. No. It was probably it was the guys were having so much fun on it. They were spinning, but it was like front side 360s, backside 360s. The guys were, but the channels were able to lock in if you wanted to just drive down the line,
right,
and get straight down the line. But it just unlocks a whole world of fun for those guys.
Yeah.
Honestly, so
it does that. It sounds more like a snowboard move in the way that.
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
And then how did you get on in a competition then?
Somehow I managed to win it. And the
part-time shaper.
Yeah. The reason I'm told it won by the pros who were surfing it was that for some reason this totally weird looking board surfed the most normal out of the whole 6.
Okay.
So to them, they couldn't get their head around the fact that it surfed like a shortboard, felt like their shortboard, going left, going right, whether you're a regular foot or goofy foot. And I still can't figure out why it was like that. But somehow it matched the brief, which was to make a weird board that surfed well. Yeah. And I think I do feel like there was an element of luck, a little bit of skill in there, hopefully. But at the end of the day, I just can't believe it.
That's incredible. And the thing that, again, looking at this board, I can kind of understand the outline shape and what that's doing. The thing that blows my mind is how you then set the fins. It's obviously on a thruster, but it's not like a thruster anybody would seen if I've not looked at an ASIM before. How do you work out where them fins need to be? Well,
on this board, on the shorter heel edge, we've got a quad set up in FCS 2 when the plugs are set into the channels. And then on the longer toe edge, you've got a single plug, which is for a twin fin. So on one side you've got a 20, the other side you've got a quad. And then it's how do you balance that on the board? Because if you set the plugs incorrectly, you can get the board can actually track to one side.
Okay.
You might get tracking to the right, or you might get tracking to the left, which can totally ruin your board, because you want that board to go where you want it to go, not where the board's trying to go, because the fins are all wonky. But so this was the very first board I'd ever made as an asymmetric, and it was a bit of a guess and a bit of like trying to work it out. I mean, we did spend probably an hour, me and some of the guys, just like placing plugs on the board and trying to figure out what the best spot would be. So we kind of came up with a balance point where the single fin on the one rail was kind of centered between the two quad plugs, and that did seem to work. Also, the stringer running through the tail is raised out of the board like another fin. So it's like a long, short fin running from a third up the tail, off the back. And I feel like that actually created a balance between the left side and the right side. That little fin running through the middle sort of straightened everything out.
Was that a beforehand overall thought, or was that a why not, I'll just try it kind of?
Yeah, I started planing the board from the rails, and as I was literally like in the first minute, I got to the stringer and I was like, maybe I can use the stringer in this, it's got to be weird, so let's see what I can do. And it kind of just evolved as I was shaping. You've got to remember, when we were making these boards, all 6 of us didn't have time to plan. It's literally you were shaping on a whim after pulling something out the hat that you had to shape. So it was highly stressful, spur of the moment, just go with the flow and see what happens. And
it's literally bake-off for surfboards.
A little bit.
It really is. Does that still go on as well, the same competition, is it?
No. So I think the UK one was the last one, and that was 5 years ago. And strangely, it feels like it was like the prequel to the electric acid surfboard test, because that's kind of like a similar thing for now. It was, for me, that was just a great experience to be part of.
What a great moment. That is a fantastic, especially, you said you weren't expecting to be selected to do that. Part-time shaper against these, I guess, big names in shaping, or people that do it full-time, dedicated. and to win as well. And it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
that thing is
yeah.
something else.
Yeah, well, I must say the other 5 shapers were phenomenal. The boards they made were absolute beauties, and so there was absolutely nothing wrong with any of their boards.
No.
And Nixon really looked after all of us.
Yeah.
You know, we all got paid. We got given custom-made watches. Each of us has a totally unique, one-of-a-kind watch.
I presume yours is yellow.
No. These watches they gave us were like metal analog watches with these leather and fabric combination type straps.
Nice.
And on the back of the bezel they'd engraved each shaper's logo on their own watch.
Oh, that's what a touch, yeah.
With the Nixon Weird logo engraved on there as well.
Yeah.
And that each of those watches is totally unique. They were custom made in the Nixon shop in London, apparently.
Oh, that's cool.
So we all took something away.
That's a great touch. What an experience that must have been.
It was great.
And I would presume, I mean, it sounds like to get a Rochfort custom board is quite a special thing. If you do 2 a month, it's a bit like try to get a Bentley, you know, there's a waiting list.
Like I don't advertise or anything, but there always is a little bit of a queue. And I've never had a gap where I've not had a board to make. And you know, during COVID, all the shapers were super busy, and my waiting list was over 6 months at one point. But generally, if you place an order, it's usually about 3 to 4 month wait.
Okay.
And it kind of just takes over on its own without doing anything.
I mean, not to take anything away from any other shapers and board companies, but you know, you're getting a full-on personal experience knowing that that board in your hand from start to finish.
Yeah, well, I think people are coming back to board shapers. I mean, you can go into lots of surf shops and buy some absolutely amazing boards from shapers all over the world, but I think a lot of people are looking for that bespoke experience again. The local shapers in the UK definitely saw a huge rise in demand over COVID, and it's still big now. I think everyone needs to buy a custom board at some point, and to have that experience with a shaper, that personal experience. Go in the factory, meet the shaper, talk to them, tell them what you need, listen to their advice. You know, at the end of the day, they're going to make you a board for your local spot. You know, that's going to be custom for that spot with a certain rocker and a certain shape. You can customize everything, including your color and spray. And you know, you go into most shops and you're buying a whiteboard off the rack, and they're all the same. So,
actually, you're not necessarily losing any money by going and getting a custom board, which I think is contrary to belief. Yeah,
and most custom-made boards will be the same price as you get from a shop, but it's, you know, that board's going to have your name in the board at the end of the day, and it's totally unique. And you've had that whole experience that you could pay a lot of money extra for.
Yeah. And then you go from getting either a shop board or stock board, like you were saying earlier, Mitch, like having a conversation with someone about fins. Oh, fins aren't important.
Yeah, and this is, you know, so me and Brad are doing something together with FCS based on a conversation, and, you know, something I was very guilty of, and I imagine a lot of people listening too probably were at some point. And I used to say that, oh, fins, I'm not good enough for fins to make a difference. And then Alan, our friend Alan, Adrenaline Athlete, he, when we were down at Boardmasters, it kind of, I guess, reminded me of that, because he said the same thing, and I was like, no, Alan, fins make a huge difference to your surfing, because the first time I was able and lucky enough to try some different fins to the, you know, the one set I owned that went on every single board, I could feel the difference. I couldn't explain the difference, but I knew there was a difference, and realising that, and obviously it's a costly experiment, but actually from the moment, and you know, tell me what you think, but I think from the moment you're able to catch your own waves, generate your own speed to the point maybe of just trimming along a wave, then fins start to make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I mean, fins are 30% of your board's performance, which is a big number.
Wow,
if you get that, if you put the wrong set of fins in, that 30% can, you know, make a huge difference to how your board feels. Your fins are like your engine of your board. And they're your engine and your brakes at the same time. So if you imagine taking the engine and the brakes out of a car and push it down a hill. You're basically going to fly down this hill. You can't stop, but you can't slow down, and you will just keep speeding up and keep going and losing control. If you take your surfboard in the water with no fins, you're going to have the same experience. It's just going to go. You're not going to be able to stop or control your speed. Mm-hmm. So what you do about your engine is you put your engine in your board, which is your fins, and depending on what engine you put in your board, that's going to determine how your board feels. So if you imagine if you've got a nice car, but you put a little 1 litre petrol engine in it, that maybe is equivalent to your cheap plastic fins.
Okay.
Or you could put a V8 in that engine, and that's your FCS 2H4 carbon quad, for example. Those two fin setups are going to feel totally night and day to each other. Mm-hmm. So what you want to do is kind of like select the right set of fins based on your ability and the board you're riding, and that will enhance your surfing experience no end. If you get it wrong, you can make what you thought was a magic board an absolute dog. You can also turn a dog of a board into a magic stick just by changing the fins.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are put off by fins by the price of fins as well, though. I think that's,
I hear that a lot.
You look at fins like, well, so I longboard, so I've got a single fin, and I look at a single fin, and you're not getting one for under 80 quid up to 150, even more than that sometimes,
Yeah, well, if you think about the cost of a fin, it sounds expensive. Let's say a good set of fins is going to set you back 80 to 100 quid, talking thruster set, What about the cost of your surfboard? That's off the rack, you're paying 600 to 700 quid.
Yeah.
Okay, so an 80 quid set of fins is 15% of the cost of your board.
Yeah.
But remember, those fins generate 30% of your board's overall performance. So actually, a quality set of fins is still very good value for money, because you need to remember that 30% factor. And 15% of the cost of your board really does make it actually good value in comparison.
It's quite a good way to put it, to be fair, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So on your FCSs, what are the sort of ranges they go through then? Is there like a stand? I know nothing about these types of fins. This is more your area.
Well, I guess, again, when I've done my own little bit of research into, I use FCS2s and I always have, I thought fins were a minefield because there's so many options. But actually, and I think I was sent a link to, it was on the FCS website, which I know it still is, a video about the 4 FCS fin families. There's only 4 families of fins, right?
Yes, there is.
And then they obviously break down further within that. But when I watched that video, I was like, actually, this makes a lot of sense. It sort of vaguely talks about, what that fin is doing, what the rake does. And within that, there's, I think, I was going to say almost a calculator, but it is a calculator which will tell you based on your, your size, your weight, etc., and ability, the fin family you need to be, within.
So on the FCS website, there's a tab called Find Your Fin, and you just click on that tab and it asks you 5 simple questions about you as a surfer, your weight, that kind of thing, and it will spit out a handful of fins that are recommended for you, just to really simplify it. It can look overwhelming when you're in a shop and there's 300 sets of fins on the wall, and where do you start? Some people will go, I want a red fin, so they buy a red fin to match their board, but that really is
would do that?
That's really the wrong end to start. What you need to do is find the model or shape of fin that is suited to you as a surfer, and then maybe find the color that you like within that family. And there's 4 families in the FCS range: the Reactor, Performer, Accelerator, and Carver. And on the left side, you've got the Reactor, which is like a very upright fin.
Okay.
And on the right-hand side, you've got the Carver, which is a really rakey fin. So you go from upright to rakey, and the 2 in the middle are kind of a hybrid of those 2 models. So if you understand how those 4 models of fin work, then all the rest of the fins in the range fit into one of those 4 families.
I think that's actually really well explained and simplify. That's the simplest version I've heard of, like, someone saying fins and going just like, well, it's basically that simple. That's it. Everything fits within those 4. Because it is. I go in a shop and I look at a wall of fins, and like even just like longboard fins. When I'm looking at a single fin, there's so many variations, and I even though I've spoken to Chris from Logfin Co, who deals in longboard fins, it still makes my brain hurt just looking at them.
Yeah, well, this goes a little bit back to talking to your shaper. So if you're getting a board built by a shaper, he can recommend size and shape based on the board you've ordered and your surfing ability based on what you tell him. Also, I mean, the same goes for the retail stores. So a quality surf shop, the staff will know what they're talking about. Part of my job is to train those staff, and I do that quite regularly. I also teach fins to Cornwall University, to the surf science degree students. They come here and I give them a lesson on fins, and they all walk away here blown away about how simple it is when you actually break it down. So those four families are the key. The fins on the left being your very pivotal fin, more designed for your smaller wave boards, and then the ones with a lot of rake for your high performance. Think long, open, drawn out turns on point break waves. That's your Carver family. And in the middle you got the Performer, which is your all rounder, because it balances those two aspects together.
And then where do you sort of break that down? If we've discussed that's kind of thruster setups. If you're starting to look at, twin fins and quads, etc., where do they? I guess I've not experimented with fins outside of just thrusters. Where would you break that down, or how would you break that down to someone?
So it's a little bit more complicated when you go into like quads and 20s, because when you think about 20s, you're also talking about keels. And then you get split keels, which are like a hybrid of a twin keel and a quad. So there's all these variables, but that category, which we call the speciality category, is totally unique. And there's so many versions of the same thing in all different, slightly tweaked nuances between them that give you a slightly different feel. So with twins, it's all about just experimenting, and I think that's the advantage of finding a store that potentially has a demo range. One example is Down the Line Surf Shop. They've got a really big range of demo fins that I work closely with them on supplying the right fins for what people are asking for. And you'll find that a lot of those fins tend to be speciality fins that people are unsure like which 20 to choose. So there's maybe 5 or 6 20 options there in different models that they can try in the same board. Same on the high-end priced fins, like thruster fins, like the new H4 fin will set you back around £135. But it's a bit harder to separate the money for those, or to give the store the money for those fins when you're not sure what's going to happen when you put them in your board. So why not try them first? And somewhere like Down the Line offers a demo try before you buy. And I think that gives people the opportunity to try different things, and that's not a bad thing, because a lot of people will set themselves with one set of fins for all their boards, and they just switch that set of fins between all their boards.
Another question on the SoftTech, actually. Like we get quite a few messages of people that say about they've got a SoftTech board and now they want to move up to their own shape board or own shop board. And we've had a few where people have been, I've been riding a SoftTech for 6 months or a year or something like that. Have you, it's going to be quite a difficult question to answer, or even for me to word it properly, but someone's been surfing 6 months, say they surf every week, they're getting loads of use out of it. Someone's had a SoftTech for a year and then they're surfing once or twice a month. How long can you spend on a SoftTech, would you think, until you've got to make that decision to move? Because I still get on a foamy every now and then. I still absolutely have a blast, but I don't think I would if I was surfing a foamy all the time. Does that make sense?
Well, I think a foamy has a place in everyone's quiver. Foamy will come out some point. On those small little days. You might take a longboard or you take the foamy. If you got kids, you go on the beach as a family, foamy goes along because you can you can push little Johnny in on some small like learner waves, and then while he's back on the beach building sandcastles, Dad can go and have a little shred out the
when
back.
you've sent him to the beach to build sandcastles so you can have a shot on it.
Yeah, I think my if I reworded that question, it'd be like I do think that like people think they've got to get off a foamy quicker, and it's going to make them a better surfer.
I guess it depends on what you want out of surfing. If you're surfing to progress, I would say you probably want to get off a foamy pretty quickly to maybe not let bad habits set in. But for me anyway, having started surfing so much later in life, maybe I understand a little bit more that it's all about learning to walk, get consistent walking, step down to what would be a hardboard, maybe a mini mile, whatever, and then get reconsistent again, because actually coming down from that foamy to that mile will be a massive step, and then it's getting consistent, and then learn the turn or whatever.
Yeah, and when you're kind of progressing onto that other board, you might be still using the foamy in certain conditions and stepping between the two as you taking that progressive step. But also with the foamies, we do a range of progressive foamies. So we start right at the bottom end with a pure learner board. They're big old fat things called Zeppelins, big like 8 and 9 foot things, and then we do foamies that look more like shortboards with a slightly pointier end, but still have the length and the volume, as well as FCS2 fin plugs, so you can start experimenting with fins as well.
That's cool.
So you can actually be progressing on foamies without having to go onto a hardboard.
That's cool.
And we go right through to a range we call epoxy series, which are really high performance foamies that surf and feel like a custom board.
Yeah.
Because inside the board is a hard epoxy glassed shell wrapped in foam. So you'll be surprised how good those things surf. I mean, foamies have come a long way.
Because I was saying to you, that old surf I had at the wave on a foamy. Yeah. I hate taking my own board to the wave. So I used one of their. I used to use one of their older foamies that they had before, and they were starting to get really battered. And they had some newer ones in. I tried one of those, and it was so buoyant. And I was catching every single thing in the whole set we were in. Yeah, I was catching 2 or 3 each time, and that's more waves than I've ever caught of the wave in my life. And everything just seemed to click on this, and this. Like the foamy felt just like I had so much time. But the thing is,
it takes you back to that fundamental of surfing. Like I love a foamy day. I love when foamies are coming out, and also especially if the friends out on it, because it kind of just turns into this unruly lineup of board swaps and acid drops, and it's just so much fun, which surfing should be. Yeah, you got a bad rep, I guess, for some people. We were chatting to Steve from Karma. He said, back in the 80s, he was going out on foamies. On the 90s, he was going out on foamies, and it wasn't really the done thing at the time. And even the people that knew him were, giving him them kind of looks as to, what are you doing? Are you injured? But he was having so much fun over anyone else, getting on everything.
Yeah, well, foamies definitely, they were kooky boards when they would, you were a kook if you had a foamy on your arm. But I think times have changed, and that's a lot thanks to surf instructors. Surf instructors doing lessons all day and sneaking out the back for a quick ride on the foamy, realizing actually these things are fun. Yeah. And I think, surf instructors, everyone wants to be a surf instructor, don't they? Or be like one. So that may have helped. But the progression over the last 5 years has been phenomenal.
And just on the fins, without putting you on the spot for the FCS riders within the UK, how much input do them guys and girls have back to FCS over the fin setups or the fin systems? And
well, our UK team, they all have their favourites, and they tend to stick to their favourites. They'll have a go at something else every now and again just to try and get a different feel or see what it's all about. But the global FCS team are hugely important in the development of the FCS fin range. They are our test riders. They're the dummies, basically, that take these fins in sample format, try them, and we will go back and remake and resand and reshape multiple times until we get it right. One example is Mick Fanning. He's probably our principal test rider.
Mm-hmm.
He's developed recently the H4 fin for us, as well as bring out his own twin in a similar template to the H4. And his own fin, the MF thruster set, is one of the best sellers in the FCS2 range.
Okay.
Still to this day.
And I'm curious as to, I'm going to take nothing away from Mick, he's an amazing surfer and an amazing man. I'm curious as to, and this is probably going to sound like me trying to get a job, I'm not, but, if there's something going, how much input do FCS have/take from your average surfer? Because, what Mick Fannon's taken from a surfboard could never relate to me, because I can't do that.
Yeah, well, the FCS design team themselves are just like us, normal guys. They're all really cool guys, like guys you'd go and have a beer with, guys you go and have a surf with, and probably surf on a similar level. They're also taking everything they're designing and trying it, and then passing it on to friends, family, and team riders. So everyone's having a bit of a play on the equipment. It's not exclusively tested by the top athletes.
That's music to my ears.
Yeah, but they're the ones who you'll be surprised what they can feel in their fins.
Yeah, and we had a chat about that before. It's I can't quite comprehend the level. It's a bit like that Formula One driver mentality where every little thing, that awareness, when I just if you could change my fins, I would know you've changed my fins, but I couldn't describe why I know that.
Yeah, but guys like Mick Fanning and Kelly Slater are two good examples. They can pick out the smallest thing that isn't right or is right, and they'll know why it's working, and they'll know the part of the fin that's making it feel like that.
Wow. Which
I think's incredible, like super fine detail like that. But that's how you create an ultimate product that gives you the top performance you can get out of it.
Yeah, and should ask you a few questions about your own surfing as well. Really. I mean, we got when you started and everything, and how was it? How did you find it moving from South Africa to here and surfing here? How was it a big shock when you started surfing here? Was it much difference?
The main thing was the difference in weather and temperature, and having to wear a wetsuit when I spent most of my time wearing boardies. Probably the most I'd surfed wetsuit wise was a shorty.
Okay.
But yeah, trying to get used to all the rubber, and even how many years ago was that now? Coming over in 1999.
Yeah,
so that's like 23. Yeah, wetsuits 23 years ago were not what they are today.
Definitely.
So I remember them.
I remember surfing Fistral, and I was in the most pain I've ever been from my hands. My hands were so cold. I think I had frostbite, but it took me a good part of 2 hours to get proper feeling in my hands.
You get proper claw hands.
I had claw hands, but I had pain. It was like it was nothing. I remember it was January, and my wetsuit was a 3-2 that I'd brought over from South Africa, and I had a pair of random booties on there. I don't even know where they came from, but I had no gloves.
Was this January 99 or?
This would have been probably 2000.
That might have been the same year as we were talking that me and Spoons and Leighton were down there, and Spoons had a 3-2 with no arms, but he had gloves.
This photo is amazing. I don't know how he had sleeveless wetsuit, but he did. But he's still wearing gloves. It's just like not big enough to pull that look off.
But he lasted 10 minutes in the water, and then he was out on the side throwing up. It was so cold.
It's hard to describe to someone who hasn't had that cold water immersion in the UK in the winter. But it also lets you know, if you can enjoy surfing in the winter in the UK, like you're locked into surfing.
Absolutely.
You are there.
Thank goodness we've got good gear these days, and we can all be comfortable and flexible, and you can surf any day no matter what the weather.
I'm even genuinely impressed by, in the 9 years I've been surfing, I'm sponsored by Seaskins, and I made a piece recently, I called it the Seaskin 6, and I've always said this thing about, you should be wary of what people who either get paid in products or money to talk about products have to say, but you shouldn't just discredit it because they're saying it because they're getting paid, because they may genuinely love it. And this piece was about, and I don't know why, I've still got every wetsuit I've ever owned and ever bought. I've still got all the 6 wetsuits from Seaskins I've bought, including the first ever wetsuit I bought, which was a winter suit 9 years ago. And I made a piece saying exactly about that, and putting that 9-year-old wetsuit on in comparison to, you know, the craziness of a Halo XR8 sort of, you know, the technology, it's night and day.
Yeah.
You know, it's like putting on a t-shirt compared to putting on, I don't know, some, you know, like a big puffer jacket.
Yeah.
It's amazing how far it's come then. So I couldn't even imagine 20 years ago what you were in.
Yeah, just remember it wasn't flexible at all, and it was thin and didn't seem to do anything.
No, they were crap.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Literally, I remember that they did a slight job, but it was nothing ever seemed to fit right.
The main job it did was chafe your armpit.
Yeah,
and your neck.
And your neck, you used to look like you'd hung yourself all the time. You used to have like a red mark around your neck where the salt had rubbed on it and everything like that.
Right at the point where you get flush every time you duck dived as well.
That's not cool.
Yeah, it's just awful.
Not at all.
No, they were bad. Yeah, so question we always ask: best wave you've ever caught, worst wipeout.
Best wave, probably. I have been lucky enough to surf some great places, but J Bay's got to be one of my favourites. Supers, what a wave that is when it's on, and also probably the Mentawis. I think one particular session at Bank Vaults sticks in my mind. Nearly double overhead barrels. So I mean, just dreamy stuff. That's probably
it's dreamy stuff. It's terrifying stuff.
It's terrifying, yeah, no doubt.
That's just two that I can think of. And worst wipeout got to be last year when I snapped my leg surfing. That was pretty.
Where was that?
Top of the list for me. That was here in Newquay at Crantock Beach.
Oh.
And wasn't even like an out of the ordinary day. It was early morning on a Friday before work. Just went for a quick surf with my mate Pete, and it was the last wave in. I think I even said, should we get one more? And jinxed it maybe. Just rode this wave all the way into the inside, and it was a really small section. I just hit the lip on the inside and just heard this huge bang noise. And I was just lying in the water in agony. Didn't really know at the time what had actually happened, but I thought that noise was the board flipping over and the rail whacking me in the shin, and it just made that crack noise.
Right.
What it turns out it was literally the shin bone snapping in half like a twig on a tree, which made that noise. So at the time when I didn't really know what was going on, I was just laying in the water. Luckily it was on the inside, so I was lying on my back and I could feel the sand underneath me. And I was just lying there waiting for the pain to go away. It was just severe with pins and needles. And then I was like, okay, well, it's pretty bad. I'm just going to need to get out the water. I was lying there. I had to take my leash off the other leg because I was being just dragged around in the whitewater. And then tried to roll over, and I realised I couldn't because my foot was like an anchor in the sand.
No.
And
so we're talking clean break.
Clean break, not through the skin, but the bones were both gone, and my foot was just like a floppy mess, like underneath. Trying to roll over couldn't do it. So I had to lay on my back again and just see if I could find someone to help me. And a couple of minutes later, probably, there was no one on the beach. It was 7th of May, early morning Friday. There's no tourists around yet. The lifeguards weren't on duty yet. It was actually the day before the lifeguards started back on duty. And my friend Damo, he runs a business in Newquay called Box and Barber, really, really nice coffee shop. Him and his brother was surfing, and he just happened to be walking out of the water as I was lying there, and I waved to him. I was like, Damo, and he waved to me. Went, all right, Brad. Thought I was just having a little, how you doing? But anyway, he realised something was up, and he came over, and I think he saw my leg, and he was like, oh my God, hang on, just wait there. And he just disappeared, and then a minute later he came back with his brother, Ollie, and the two of them kind of like picked me up over their shoulders and carried me out. And at this point, my mate Pete, who I was surfing with, came in wondering what was going on. And the one person on the beach who happened to be Dale from Big Green Surf School was giving a lesson, saw something was up, and he came running over, and he happened to have a phone in his bag, and he was able to call the Coast Guard.
As any good surf instructor would.
Yeah. So, but there was literally no one else on the beach with a phone, or even a person on the beach, and the nearest car park was...
It's not a long walk at Crantock, is
it? Well, this is low tide Crantock.
Oh, no.
The nearest car park from where I was on the beach was nearly 1 kilometre away. That's Crantock car park. So anyway, they wanted to send the air ambulance out, but it just happened to be out on another call, so they sent the Coast Guard by car, and they managed to get so far up the beach and then had to park and walk through the river. Same with the paramedics. They came and helped me out on the beach. And randomly, the Coast Guard arrived, I think it was 4 guys, and the lead Coast Guard happened to be my old boss at DC Shoes. Matt Relton's his name.
This wouldn't have happened in DC Shoes, would it?
and I just was so surprised to see him. And then two paramedics turned up, which was when I was given morphine. And wow, never had morphine before in my life, but what a experience that was.
Yeah.
To see, to have that pain I was in just melt away. I felt like I was sinking into a warm bath in the sand. It was, and because at that point I was already in a bit of shock, and so I was shaking from cold and shock on the beach. So that was incredible. And then those guys, I had 6 guys carry me to the car park on a stretcher, through the Crantock River, all the way to the ambulance.
There's nothing pleasant about any of that.
No. And then on top of that, I had to sit. I was in the ambulance for 5 hours. 3 hours of that was sitting outside the hospital on the helipad, waiting for a bed to become available.
You're joking.
But the most random thing about that was the paramedic. His name was Steve. He happened to be his main job is a paramedic, but he's also a foster carer. Okay. And me and my wife have been going through a process to adopt.
Oh, wow.
So randomly, we just chatted for hours about fostering and adoption, and I learned a lot of him about the adoption process. And we're sort of most of the way through that at the minute, and we're just now waiting for a match to adopt a child.
That's incredible.
But so strange that, a lot of this information I learned came from the paramedic who
it's almost like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
I feel really bad even going back. I was going to ask you, did you have to get your wetsuit cut off? But I can't even.
I did.
That's just what you're doing. That is amazing for some, a child's life. What you're giving someone a chance. Total hats off to you.
Oh, thanks. Well, we're very excited. It's been a long process. Even our son Kai is super keen to have a little brother or sister, and he's been involved from the start. And we're ready to bring somebody into our home and give them a better life.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I hope that goes really well for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if I said to you, surfers not street children, what would you say?
A charity close to my heart. They're based in South Africa and Mozambique, and actually in South Africa, not far from where I grew up.
Okay.
And Tom Hewitt, who's a good friend of mine, he actually lives in North Devon, of all places. And I got to know Tom partly through FCS, but also because as a company, when we get damaged boards, because we sell SoftTech boards, if you get a damaged board, couriers treat them like, you're surprised.
Yeah.
But if they get damaged, the retailer doesn't want them anymore. They can't sell them on. So you end up with this board that actually is probably totally surfable with a little bit of cosmetic damage. What do you do with that? Well, in the old days, you'd be surprised to know the policy, not just, it was policy in any board manufacturer.
Okay.
You cut that board in half and you throw it in the tip. And when I was told that, I was like, no way, I'm not doing that. That board can be surfed. I'm going to keep it here. Maybe I'll use it as a demo board or whatever. And I ended up getting a bit of a pile of boards that were getting damaged by couriers that I couldn't, do anything with at the time. And met Tom. He was just telling me about what he does, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is where these boards are meant to go.
Yeah.
So I started donating some SoftTech boards through the company. We would write them off and give them to Tom at the charity, and they were being shipped over by in board bags to South Africa at the time. And then a few years ago, probably 3 years ago now, my best mate Pete said to me, look, I've got this board in my shed. You made it for me. I don't use it anymore, but I also don't want to sell it because it's a good board, and I can't bear to really sell it. So would you donate it to that charity you've been helping, Surfers Not Street Children? I was like, of course I will, yeah. Have you got any more? Is this, he's like, oh, I might have another one or two. So he pulled out a few more boards, and I did the same, went into my shed, which is bulging with boards, and that may never get used again. So I was like, okay, we got like a bunch of boards out, and I took a photo of these boards and put them on social media and said, guys, come on, who else has got a shed with boards they don't use? Look in your lofts, look in your garages. And my one post got shared, I think, nearly 50 times, even by people I don't even know.
Yeah.
It just went viral all over social media in the UK, and next thing you know, that one board that came out of a shed ended up being over 200 surfboards.
Wow.
That's incredible.
It's amazing.
Yes, we recently, this year actually, got them to South Africa after a bit of a break because of the pandemic, where everything had to be put on hold. But without giving too much away, there's actually a film of it coming out tomorrow. So by the time this podcast is out, it will already be launched by FCS and Surfers Not Street Children. So on all their social media channels, and there'll be a video on FCS YouTube, which tells this story. So you'll be able to watch it from start to finish and see how it ends as well, and how we get over 200 boards to South Africa, because that became a bit of a...
They're not going in a board bag.
Exactly.
Not an easy jet, or not.
No. So if you get a chance, look it up on social media through FCS or Surfers Not Street Children, and FCS YouTube channel has the video embedded there.
Yeah. Do you know, it's something I love about, I guess, the world of surfing. I'm not. I'm sure there must be similar stories across other industries and whatever, but at the heart of it, it could be easy to stand back and look at big business and assume that they're just out to make profit, just money. But actually, these little stories, these humbling stories of honesty and helping other people from these big said businesses of giving back, that is incredible. Like, I'm not sure that's happening across other industries, but I hope it is. But that is such an amazing thing to hear. Yeah,
well, I also just want to highlight what the team at Surfers Not Street Children do, because this is all what we've done, is it's all for them and what they are doing for these children. Because as a charity, the team, their, I'll say business model, it's not a business model, but it fuses surfing, mentorship and care, and they have a dedicated local team of social workers, carers, lifeguards, surf coaches, and all the administration staff who have to deal with everything. They rely on donations, so they can't run without money to support all these social workers and the children. Hundreds of children going through this charity, and they've supported successfully over 2,000 kids to date. And you'd be surprised how little money, how far a little bit of money can go. Yeah. For example, 30 quid will buy one kid lunch every day for a whole month.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. So, and they've just started a drive this month, a Christmas fundraiser to try and, because right now with the way the economy is, they're having a difficult time, just like everybody. So, but the program, I mean, it transforms lives drastically, and quite an impressive portion of those children who were street kids have gone on to become coffee baristas, lifesavers, surf shop staff, restaurateurs. Some are even surf coaches and pro surfers, or now employees of the charity and working for the charity and doing and putting back in the work that was given to them. It's incredible what they do, and surfing is the hook. That's what brings these kids back every day, because without the charity, their other option is street life. And street life, most of the time, ends up in gangs or prostitution. Because those gangs become like a family. But Surf's Not Street Children has become family to a lot of these children. They not only get that draw with surfing because they want to do it every day. The charity supports them in education and nutrition. They've got a computer room at their facility, and they feed them every day, and they've even got beds. If these kids can't go home for some particular reason, they can stay on site at the facility for a period of time until they're ready to move on.
That's just incredible. That's
So we'll put a link to that on this episode as well, so people can click on the link and go straight over to Surfers Not Street Children and find that. I think one final question to ask you, which you seem like a really bloody nice guy. A
lovely guy, honestly,
What does surfing mean to you?
Oh, gee. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche question, isn't it? Like, I could just answer the same as you've probably heard before, but I don't know. It's surfing, as you've heard, is pretty much my whole life, but my life revolves around it. I think surfing is just a way of life, a release at the same time, my hobby, but passion at the same time. You've got to admit, everyone in the surf industry is such, everyone's good, nice people, like-minded, love what they do, passionate about the environment, very family-orientated. It's like a gang, isn't it? It's like, surfers, all, if you're walking through a high street in the middle of the country where there's no beach, you'll spot a surfer and you can give that little nod. It is like a family.
Yeah. It's exactly what it's like.
Yeah. Well, I think that's absolutely brilliant. If you want to tell anyone where they can find you online and...
well, if you want to see my boards, it's at Rochfort Surfboards online, Facebook and Instagram. If you want to find Surfers Not Street Children, they're also on Facebook and Instagram at Surfers Not Street Children. FCS and Gorilla Grip and SoftTech, all there as well. Get on there and follow. Send us a message if you want to ask anything as well. If you've got any questions about boards or fins, then I'm more than happy to take direct messages anytime.
Amazing. Brad, thank you so much. It's genuinely been a pleasure.
It's been really nice chatting to you guys. Thank you.
And thanks for that, Brad. What an amazing guy. Like that at the end when he started to saying about he's now going through the adoption process, it just makes you think you're even nicer,
Well, I have to refer back to the start, and I said that he was the nicest man in surfing. I now wholly agree with you that he's the nicest man on earth. Him and his partner, what a thing to be doing. There's so many unfortunate people and kids and everything in the world. And to be somebody so busy as well, he's got this full-on career. I mean, I don't know how full-on it looks, but, he's obviously very immersed in what he does and with a passion for it, which has clearly come across. Yeah. But to still have the want and love and give, to do that is honestly, I take my hat off to the pair of them. I think that's epic. I'm just really, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah. Not me. It's just, it is, isn't it? It's just not even the end of it, that bit. Yeah. But as I said at the start, the surfing knowledge alone, and I don't really know what to say about him because he's just just saying he's such a nice guy sort of seems a bit of an understatement of
it does seem an understatement.
How much knowledge he's got, how when he's talking about things, you can just see his brain ticking onto what he's talking about and 50 other things that would go with that and link it all together.
No, I get what you're saying, because like in most of the moments, I just open my face hole and see what comes out. There's no real thought process. There's nothing working in the background. There's not like some Family Guy cutaway where there's somebody working on some B-roll. It's just, I open up and go where it goes. But you can tell from when you're posing questions or taking a direction with conversation that his head's just 10 to the dozen, you know, getting the answer prepared or multiple answers and all that stuff. And I don't want to go on about, because I don't know, it sounds like we're almost sponsored by Brad by just talking about how nice a bloke he is, but I genuinely can't reiterate it enough. And I spoke to him today at date of recording, and just got a little update on their adoption process. And I'm really pleased to say that they've officially passed. And they're officially approved as adopters, and now they're just waiting for a match.
Oh, amazing!
So genuinely wish them all the best.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
You know, everything for the future. And for me, there's a bit of a personal element there, and I don't want to talk about it too much in the reasons why, or I won't talk about it. But I will say that it's just really relevant to part of my upbringing as well. So to see people that are, like I say, so immersed in their life, still able to give that time, love and passion. I think amazing. Well done to you guys.
And I mean, the guy, like we've spoke before to people, like we've had Chris from Logfin Co talking about, like, you know, fins for longboards, and we spoke a bit to Dom about fins, but the guy knows so much about fins, and he could, literally, we could just go back and just record an episode going, right, let's talk about fins, what they do, why they do, where they do it.
Big time.
And you could just go into, like, even like him to like saying like little movements and stuff like that of the fins, you know?
Yeah, totally. And do you know what as well? I reckon he's a secret shredder. Like, I don't think
there's any secrets about it.
No, but he done that thing, like I've already mentioned, about being an average surfer, because he referred to himself in our category. He was like, "Oh, I'm just like you guys." I'm like, mate, no, you ain't. You definitely are not.
I'm more likely to break my leg walking to the surf than actually surfing.
Like, I wouldn't even want a T-shirt saying Peniche and Super Tubos on it, just in case somehow that T-shirt got connected to a rogue set. You know?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, well, speaking of fins.
Yes. And, you know, so we mentioned it at the start. And so we are, super stoked to announce, and thanks to Brad, that we are going to be working with FCS and collaborating together and bringing you some giveaways, which is, really exciting. And,
see, if I had my little soundboard now, I could be like,
You could do. But you don't, thankfully, so you don't have to make me sound a twat with a tumbleweed.
Yeah.
But so what we're going to be doing, some monthly giveaways.
Yes, we are.
With FCS products. And so this is the announcement for the first giveaway, which will be 1 month. We'll announce the winner as of this recording coming out. So when Brad's episode comes out, so 1 month later. So that's 2 episodes later as well, for anyone that pays attention.
So this episode, if you're listening, has come out now on a Sunday. So we're now going to release on a Sunday evening, around 6 or 8 o'clock Sunday evening, something like that.
So when you drive, wherever you drive on a Sunday night.
Yeah, or you can listen to it Sunday night, or you can watch it on YouTube Sunday night, or you can listen to it on your drive to work Monday morning. So this one comes out on the 27th, the Monday the 27th. Going forwards from this, it will be on a Sunday evening. So the month from then, there will actually be 2 podcasts, and that will be on Sunday the 23rd, St. George's Day.
Whatever that is.
It's a great day. You should celebrate it this year. Yeah, so
with the rugby.
So no reference to me at all. Just went straight over my head. So the Sunday the 23rd will be the episode that comes out, and on that one we will announce the winner.
Yeah, and also what we're going to do is we're going to release the teaser or the trailer for the episodes probably on a Friday beforehand, so you can see what's coming up, get a bit of insight. You can get yourself prepped so you can listen. So what Brad is giving away for this first giveaway with FCS is the FCS2 AM large thruster set, ultra lightweight air core construction fins from FCS, obviously. And these fins have actually got a little bit of relevance at the minute, which I'll come on to in a minute. What these fins are, they're a great all-round fin, which work in most conditions and excel in steeper waves. They are super strong, but also super flexible fins. So these are a set of fins that I would definitely want to get my hands on. They compare to a traditional glassed on or a fiberglass fin, but with a huge reduction in weight thanks to they've got this crazy ultralight air core construction, and they use this weird sort of resin transfer molding process, and that makes it really lightweight, super flexible, and gives that sort of smooth feel. And they look amazing, so that's what we're giving away. What's the relevance? So Chao Chianca, who is from Saquarema, Brazil, right, 22 years old, he has just won the last male CT event, which was the Mio Rip Curl Pro in Portugal, right? This dude has never won a CT event before. He took down Kelly Slater in the round of 32, and in the semis he scored back-to-back excellent scores. In the previous two events, right, which was the Billabong Pipeline and the Hurley Pro at Sunset Beach, he came third as well. So currently, and yes, we're only 3 events into the CT, but he's ranked number 2 in the world at like 22 years old. You know, like I just think that's really impressive. So the relevance is and the correlation is that these are the fins that he's been using. They're not the fins he's been using. They're just
not giving away his fins
for clarity, because he's now clearly got a lucky set of fins which he wants to drive forward, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's what we're giving away, right? So there's a bit of stuff behind the fin. It's not just a random set of fins.
Basically, if you win these fins, you could be as good as him.
Well, you'll be on the CT, won't you?
Yeah,
I'm sure that's got to be in the T's and C's somewhere. That's a really cool giveaway, and I'm really stoked to see that and be part of it.
Should we also tell people how they're going to win it?
Yeah, so if you want to win it, right, clearly you have to be following the socials, right? If you're listening to this on the podcast, what we need you to be doing is following the Instagram page and following the YouTube page, okay? Or subscribing to the YouTube. Subscribing to YouTube. You need to like and tag a friend on this post, both on YouTube and on Instagram. Okay, if you're already subscribing, you're already subscribing, but you still need to comment. And that helps us grow, and that helps us give you more products. So pretty straightforward. So as a recap, follow us, like the comment on both YouTube and on Instagram, just tagging a friend. And we will announce the winner 2 episodes after this.
Yeah, and on the YouTube, you got me at it now.
I know. YouTube. We said it as a joke, and now it's become the bloody
stuck
thing.
On the YouTube, I think just comment on the post, because you can't always tag people in. On
no, you
YouTube,
can't always tag people. Yeah, just comment. Yeah.
So on YouTube, just comment on the YouTube post, and on this episode, Brad's episode, just comment on this episode, and you will be in with a chance for winning the FCS 2s, and tag someone or comment on the Instagram. Both will be taken into account. So if you do both, you'll get 2 entries. If you do one or the other, you'll get 1 entry. And winner will be picked at random with a random name selector. Yes.
So thank you, Brad.
Yeah,
thank you,
Brad,
for opening our world. And actually, I'll tell you what else we didn't.
Thanks, FCS.
Thanks,
FCS, you can.
FC, yes, you can. We didn't speak about Surfers Against Street Children.
We didn't speak about that, did we?
No,
which is another part, a massive part of his. Him and Tom Hewitt. He's had stuff to do with it, and like you said, getting boards and how many boards they've sent over, and like it just goes back to the nicest guy around.
It does, and like I said, when we were speaking, it's genuinely, it's not a gimmick. This is the thing. And I think it's easy to stand back and just blame corporations and business and all the problems in the world. And I agree that there is probably businesses, or there is business that use, charities as their way of, sort of being like, well, look at what we're doing for everyone,
Yeah.
And, in a lot of instances, or in some instances, it's probably quite see-through and it's a bit fake, and it's more of a look at what we're doing as opposed to we genuinely care. Like, if you don't believe that Brad genuinely cares about these projects, like you haven't listened to the episode. Like that is a man who is clearly invested and given back to anything that he seemingly can, and in a big way. So I think this, I watched the Surfers Not Street Children episode, which is on YouTube, and we'll put the link on here as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, it should be overlaid so you've got an idea of what's going on. But even just the mechanics, did you see the video? Have you seen that ISO container, which was brimmers with surfboards and all the gear to go with it? Like, that's what an incredible thing to open up. It's a bit like, the Gadget Show giveaway. Imagine when that turns up at your door and you're like, where am I going to put all this? Not that I've ever won that, but So
I've been in your house. I've been in your house, mate. I think you have won that. I've seen the amount of gadgets that you've got in your house.
I can't even argue with that. But I just think it's great. So to see like FCS and all the other people that got involved with it, and Ben Skinner, and all these people that are able to support and provide something, all the people that provided surfboards or anything to go with it, and to give these kids just that opportunity to get off the street and do something is amazing.
So I think that's pretty much it for today's show. We've got one more, I think, that's not been filmed, which we're not saying what that is yet. And I think everything else is filmed from now on. So you get used to seeing these lovely mugs on the YouTube.
Yeah, and listen, don't forget the support on Buy Me a Coffee. That's where you're going to find all your discount codes and any of the sort of additional footage that we've got, or content that we're creating and pushing out. Hope you're enjoying it.
Yep. So, till the next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks to sponsors of this show, Srface, that's Srface. Head over to Surface Wetsuits and you will get 10% off anything you order by using the discount code UKSurfShow22.
And if you want to get 50% off the annual edition of the Adrenaline Athlete Training Program, which is a strength and conditioning program designed specifically with surfing in mind, and this is a home program or a gym version of the program. I have used the program for the last year and I swear by it. If you want to use the home edition, on the Adrenaline Athlete website, use the discount code SurfHome50, and if you want to use the gym edition, it is SurfGym50, and that is 50% off the annual membership.